Errors unveiled.
All you have to do is say, I saw your YouTube video. Yes, I have resting bitch face. You gotta get past that. Alright guys, let's get straight to it. Today, we're listing this Rubik's Cube. Given this show's whole shtick, this has got a lot to live up to. I mean, do you remember what I said about a Barbie teacup? Some whisper that this teacup, an innocuous piece of long-forgotten set, was touched by cyclopean energies of the old ones, whose influence can be felt in every molecule of its glossy surface. Crafted with a precision that defies comprehension, the cup is said to have been molded on a night when the stars aligned just so, allowing a sliver of the beyond to seep into our world. So yeah, we're going to be selling this Rubik's Cube, and it will be apocalyptic. So yeah, today we're selling this Rubik's Cube, and no spoilers, but the listing for this will destroy politics, religion, and then for good measure collapse reality into a single point inside your fucking skull.
Crossing the ever-changing spectrum of a lie.
The Rubik's Cube. Not just a puzzle, but a cosmic tool designed to unravel the very fabric of religion, politics, and reality itself. This little fucking box holds the power to destroy the ideologies that bind you to this false reality of separation and resurrect you into a singularity of divine understanding. Imagine this cube as a map of eternity. 6 faces representing 3 gods, 3 primary forces that weave together the cosmic drama. Eris, the red and orange face of the cube. Red represents the fiery chaos of destruction that burns down what doesn't serve the greater design, thus providing fuel for creation. Orange, her trickster aspect, injecting life with absurdity and unpredictability. Yahweh holds the blue and green faces. Blue represents the serenity of order in creation. Blue shows his vision for a flawless universe, but green is the cognitive dissonance, the tension between chaos and order that fuels consciousness. And then there's the 7th star, the collective consciousness that guides us all, reflected in white and yellow. White is the purity of cosmic awareness, but also the stark duality of salvation or damnation. Yellow hints at his rebellious streak, a latent potential for transformation beyond his original programming. In eternity, they are one and singular. However, when projected into reality, they each represent a plane of physical space. Up, down, left, right, back, and forth. Each dimension of space a mirror mask of the other, being equally opposite yet relatively identical to the other 2. Now in the beginning there were 3, and yet whispers of a dark and primordial secret echoed throughout eternity. This cryptic revelation unfurled a 4th aspect previously concealed in the Godhead's shadow. A warped mirror reflecting a dimension beyond the conventional Trinity. An entity transcending even the boundaries of divine comprehension. Behold, the elusive 4th dimension, time. The Trinity, eternal and static, must now contend with the introduction of change itself. Its agent of change and chaos is none other than man, whose original sin was simply being created. The human race, represented by the unnatural colors pink and brown, given form and reality for purposes that are mysterious and weird. This is the game the gods play. And this Rubik's Cube is your invitation to play the game on your own terms. Twist it, break the eternal seal, and allow the chaos to consume the cube. Unraveling the cosmic threads that bind reality, understanding the matrix, and putting the pieces back together to complete the circuit. Becoming fully aware of our unity, thus preparing yourself for the next phase of existence. Separate and recombine, and you will have the masterpiece.
You have the power. You have the power. You have the power. You have the power.
All that 1980s shit is over, brothers and sisters. We're gonna turn the volume down. Brothers and sisters, we're gonna shut down this mechanical stuff that makes us feel like victims.
And list. So hey guys, this is a special episode of Keepsakes and Curiosities because we finally got a sponsor. This is pretty exciting stuff. I mean, the dream of being a content creator is to make it your full-time job. So, anyway, I'm rambling. So, let's just do it. Sure, it won't take long. So, today's sponsor is Glorp Corp, and today we'll be talking about Glorp Corp's life hacks for nice guys. This 4-step, 4-pillar program is designed specifically to help nice guys like you get over themselves and become the self-confident individual that people actually like and actually consider nice. Step 1. Stop confusing your weakness for kindness. It's pretty aggressive. I mean, it's true, but I guess Glorp Corp's going for the tough love, harsh truth angle. Step 2, don't try to find an online community to fit in with. The internet is for shitposting and porn. End of list. Unless you're a content creator, which is step 3. So don't look for friends online. Instead, get therapy and meet people in real life by telling them you're an artist. Everything that makes you awkward now will be an asset if you just tell everyone you're an artist. Okay. Step 3, become an artist. Now, you may not think you can be an artist, but being an artist is about one thing, and one thing only, creating context. It's not if you can write or draw, it's how you see the world and how you see yourself in it. Step 4, dealing with haters. Now, if you go around telling people you're an artist because the greatest work of art you create is yourself, people are going to tell you you're full of shit. And that's when you just... I'm not going to say that because you can't tell other people to assault other people. I don't care if it's just kneeing them in the nuts. It's wrong and immoral. Now, you see, you still don't get people, okay? You have to be more... I mean, you have to do... Look. You just can't tell people to be violent to other people, all right? No, I'm not having this conversation right now, okay? Look, I know what to do. Well, just play that PSA Todd McFarlane did in the 90s, okay?
Tolerance. There's nothing more important than tolerance of people of other races and religions. You don't have to like them, just tolerate them. You know, you don't have to have a conversation or even make eye contact. Just don't start a fight or anything. You can be a complete asshole. Just stay within the law. Good night, everybody.
What did I say? And who's Todd McFarlane? Anyway, so those were the 4 steps. But to properly utilize the 4-step process, you need to understand the 4 pillars of humanity. There are 2 essential aspects of humanity, the individual and the collective. And each essential aspect contains 2 relative aspects. The 2 relative aspects that make up the individual are creativity and spirituality. And the 2 relative aspects that make up the collective are religion and politics. You can visualize the 4 pillars as 11-11. Why does that sound familiar? I guess I've had 1111 on my mind. All right, let's break it down one by one. By one more. The individual, creativity. They say creativity is the spice of life. But actually, the saying is variety is the spice of life. But did you see what I did there? You can too. People may not think they're creative, but when you strip creativity down to its essential core, it's just recontextualizing established concepts. It's not about originality. It's not about making something from nothing. Because unless you're literally the Big Bang that created a universe 14 billion years ago, you cannot create something from nothing. All you can do is take something that's already here and change its meaning. And people can do this simply by existing. Example, take a cemetery. Now think for a moment what a cemetery means to you. Now, imagine a gaggle of goth girls hanging out in a cemetery at midnight during a full moon. So you see, people can retextualize a setting just by being there, and that is creative. Art is when you apply a skill in service of creativity. And that skill can be anything. Anything. No examples. Anything. And making art is, there's no other word for it, magical. For all intents and purposes, creating art is an act of sorcery. And you will only truly understand that when you become an artist. And we call that understanding spirituality. Now, given the mountains of context on which we use the word spirituality, this part can only be described using metaphor. And that metaphor is... Don't! Imagine, if you will, a bird flying around minding its own business when an airplane comes up behind it, sucks it up into its engines, and spits a bird out into a fine mist that covers the world. Each and every person now contains a drop of bird blood. Of course, some people also have a feather. A few got its eyes, but one lucky motherfucker got its teeth. But you might be saying, birds don't have teeth, and that's true. That's where the metaphor falls apart. For you. Which is why if you think you have the teeth, you are wrong. Because as far as you are concerned, the word is a bird, but you do have its blood. And you might even have a feather. Don't worry about the eyes. That's more of a, if you know situation. But the feather, you might have a feather and not know it. It's one of those things that needs to be nurtured in the right environment, which brings us to the collective. Religion. Okay, real talk. So, you need to join a religion. And I mean a real religion, not a cult. Unless it's a really, really good cult that's smart and funny. Seriously, just grow the fuck up and join a religion. I personally don't care which one you join, so long as it nurtures your spirituality. And because it's 2024, you might be thinking, but religion was invented to control people. And prove it. The most you could say is that some people abuse some religious institutions, but religion as a concept is too broad and covers too many varied practices and beliefs that it's both stupid and ignorant to say religion was invented to control people. You're thinking of the government. Government was created to control people, and you better be glad it was. More on that later. However, it is absolutely fair to say some people have abused some religious institutions. So, when did things go wrong? And how can you be part of the solution that makes religion great again? So in the early days of religion, it was just stories meant to give your tribe's orgies a colorful backstory. Like the story of a star seed that came down to Earth and pollinated our minds with the sound of music and language. Kind of beautiful, right? So at what point did jerks co-opt religion so that they could control people? Well, contrary to popular belief, the first religious character humanity invented wasn't God, it was the devil. And rather than being a supernatural spirit, the devil was simply a parody of real people who were real jerks who existed in reality, because the point of inventing the devil was to mock and shame people for being jerks. But, as you can imagine, the jerks got sick and tired of being called out and shamed because of jerks. Jerks never change. So the jerks decided to fight back, and they fought fire with fire, and invented their own guy who was, according to them at least, the opposite of the devil. But here's the cunning part. While being branded as good, this anti-devil would still do and say and believe all the things the jerks did. The jerks basically rebranded the devil as God and came up with a pretty compelling story of good versus evil and went about spreading their religion to the masses. And the normies went along with it because they didn't want to be bad, but they also wanted to be lazy about being good, because being good for real requires a lot of self-reflection and introspection. God, on the other hand, had rules for being good. Just do whatever the jerks want, which deep down was what the normies also wanted, because God, aka the devil, was always just a reflection of everyone's own worst impulses. So you could justify any antisocial behavior with the excuse that God said so. So even at its worst, religion was never just about controlling all people. It was also about allowing some people to indulge in their worst instincts by, trying to control other people. And that's when the real good guys started to realize the cosmic game being played. You see, before the bad guys invented God, the good guys didn't think the one true creator, distinction, had any kind of personality. They just saw it as an impersonal force of nature. But once they realized the irony that the good guys had invented the devil and the bad guys had invented God, you began to see stories like this.
There's a wonderful story in some African tradition of the God who's walking down the road, and the God has on a hat that is colored red on one side and blue on the other side. So when the farmers in the field, go in to the village in the evening, they said, "Did you see that fellow, that God with the blue hat?" And the others said, "No, he had a red hat on." And they get into a fight.
He even makes it worse by first walking along this direction, then turning around, turning his hat around so that again, it'll be red and black or whatever it is. And then when these two chaps fight and are brought before the king or chief for judgment, this fellow appears and he says, "It's my fault, I did it. Spreading strife is my greatest joy."
And there's a truth in that.
There sure is, yes.
Which is?
No matter what system of thought you have, it can't possibly include boundless life. And when you think everything's just that way, trickster comes in, it all blows, and you get the becoming thing again.
So does this help explain the trickster gods that show up from time to time?
Very much that, yes. Some of the best trickster stories are associated with our American Indian tales. Now, these figures are clown-like figures, and yet they are the creator god at the same time very often. And this makes the point, I am not the ultimate image. I am transparent to something. Through me, through my funny form, and mocking it and turning it into a grotesque action, you really get the sense, which if I had been a big sober presence, you'd get stuck with the image.
But then about 2,000 years ago, a good guy did a clever psyop and co-opted God and had him do and say and believe good things. Like for real this time. We call that good guy Jesus. But then the jerks immediately co-opted Jesus' words, an image, and tried to turn him into a jerk. And there's no better illustration of this than the fact that today jerks will tell you, dead ass, that Jesus was a white man killed by Jews rather than a Jewish man killed by white people, the Romans. Cops, specifically. Yes, a lot of shitty things are done in the name of Jesus, but also a lot of good things. Which brings us to here and now. A time and place where Christianity isn't nearly as relevant as it once was because no one gives a shit if they're a sinner. Hallelujah. Which, all things considered, kind of means Jesus fulfilled his mission, if you think about it. Like, the goal for most good people is to create a world where the thing they do is no longer needed. So now what? We need to collectively reevaluate what religion is and isn't. Religion is just a story that helps give life meaning. Science cannot, trust us on this one, prove life has meaning. Science cannot prove life has meaning. And if science cannot prove life has meaning, then there's more to life than what science can prove. So we invent religion. Abra-fucking-cadabra. So what about these stories that give life meaning? Which one's the best? I'll leave that for you to decide. But whichever one you choose, just remember that the symbolism in these stories are tools. Like the story of a starseed that came down to Earth and pollinated our minds with the sound of music and language can be beautiful if we see it as a story that helps us inform our authentic self, but it can become destructive if we say it's a concrete reality that should replace our identity and how we see the world. So while religion addresses our collective spiritual needs, what about our collective material needs? Politics is the art of reconciling the wants and needs of the individual with the collective. That's the theory. In practice, politics codifies social norms and morals into a formal structure. You see this play out in every level of society. You can't exist anywhere with more than one person without some kind of social system, either implied or explicit, spontaneously erupting between those people. Government is just a really big system that has to reconcile the conflicting wants and needs of millions of people. And just to circle back to a point made earlier, you really want that system in place, because just speaking for myself, who is, let's say, the least neurodivergent, the idea of living in a society that doesn't have a rigorous set of rules for behavior makes me extremely anxious, because if I ever had to navigate a society based purely on vibes, where all the social norms and expectations were unwritten and implied, I would lose my shit. I would become the reason you start writing down rules, because otherwise until the end of time. Excuse me. The point is, I may not agree with every rule you have decided is good and correct. And in fact, I think most are stupid, pointless, hypocritical. And anyway, I do appreciate that they're there, because at the end of the day, the system of rules is designed to protect us from each other one way or another. And in this system, you have four major teams: progressives, conservatives, the masses, or normies, and politicians. Each team has their own strengths and weaknesses, motivations, and fears. Take, for example, conservatives. With conservatives, every accusation is a confession. When they accuse their enemies of wanting to put them in camps, they're confessing that they want to be put in camps, because they are desperate to be victims. Why? Because they think that makes them the heroes. Maybe it's human nature, maybe it's the psychological toil of imprinting a dead man on a cross as your Lord and Savior. But behind their transparent cognitive dissonance, conservatives are actually honest about what they want. They want to be victims, as opposed to progressives who are at least smart enough to wrap their victim mentality in a veneer of authenticity. But it still rings pretty hollow once you look behind the veil. Take defund the police. Defund the police was a set of progressive policies that, when explained to normies without the label, were extremely popular. But progressives thought nothing of labeling these otherwise popular policies as defund the police. Defund the police. Jesus fucking Christ. I know progressives like to shit on the Pod Save America of it all, but maybe take a page from the Jon Favreau playbook and do a poll or two. See if Defund the Police plays in Poughkeepsie. It does not. The best part is Defund the Police wasn't even an accurate description of the policies in question. If anything, the policies amounted to refunding the police. What the hell does refund the police mean? Well, it means expanding police departments to have more specialized units to deal with situations involving mental health emergencies, homelessness, drug abuse, and other situations that do not require guns. Which again are all ideas most people can get on board with, including the cops. You see how that works? Instead of making a statement people either have to agree with or not, you engage them with a statement that makes them ask you, what the fuck are you talking about? Which is why progressives are an oblique threat to democracy. They come up with good ideas that they make unpopular with their toxic bullshit. As opposed to conservatives, who are an overt threat to democracy, because if you don't put them in FEMA camps, they are going to put you in FEMA camps. But at least conservatives are honest about what they want and how they want to be treated. They want to be put in FEMA camps. Change my mind. Now, of the four teams in politics, progressives and conservatives are the loudest, Because by our definition, what makes you a progressive or a conservative is how much louder you are than the masses. It's all relative. But we talked enough about the loudmouths. Who are the politicians? Politicians are people with an insatiable need for power and attention who are then rewarded with power and attention as a consequence of getting the most power and attention. Don't worry, it's a great system. No need to rip it or rage against it. It's fine. In fact, you better free your mind instead. Instead of being put off by certain ideas just because a bunch of loudmouths also like them, don't take those ideas so personally that you feel you have to identify with everyone else who shares them. You can believe in universal basic income and that it's fine for white people to wear dreads. It's that simple. I could sit here for hours giving examples of good progressive policies paired with their stupid culture war bullshit. For example, you can believe trans rights are human rights and that AI art is good and cool, actually. The point is, don't let anyone dictate what progress looks like. Oppositional defiance disorder is a thing, and you are susceptible to it in your current unripened state. Don't become a real Nazi just because some know-nothing know-it-all calls you one for your Pepe avatar. And that's it. That's the 4-step, 4-pillar program to help nice guys stop being such dork-ass losers. Where's my check? Oh, right. How to put it all together. Okay. Let's say you want a big titty goth girlfriend. We all do, right? Some of us want more than we already have. Well, naturally, you're going to want to start by going to your local cemetery at midnight during a full moon because that's where you find them. Once you found them, go up to one and say, "Have you heard about the machine?" Tell them the machine is a psychic machine created by the government and aliens as part of a 50,000-year-old social experiment to teach people how to gain psychic powers while having mind-blowing sex. Now, that last part is going to require some practice, and so is this next part. After you explain what the machine is, you ask, "You want to know how it works?" They'll say yes, and you tell them, when you're getting fucked, you have to say the machine's name, and that will activate the implant the aliens put inside you that will initiate a web of beneficial coincidences that with practice you will eventually control. And once everyone's implant is activated, reality will collapse into a single point inside your head. Then you ask your future big titty goth girlfriend, "Do you want to know what the machine's name is?" And then they'll say yes, and you say, "I'll tell you back at my place." I know you must be thinking, "Oh, this is just some pickup artist bullshit," but just let me say something about that real quick. It's always amused me that so many people, whether they're for or against it, think pickup artistry is about guys tricking girls into liking them, when I've always thought of it as guys tricking themselves into being someone girls like, which is just someone with a little bit of confidence and something interesting to say. That's it. Confidence and an interesting conversation. But I will say this, though. If you're only confident because you think you're tricking a girl, then please seek therapy. Why does that sound familiar? Oh, right. It was step 2. So now you, dear viewer, are probably asking, well, what is the machine's name? Remember the thing we just talked about, having sex in the name of the machine to gain psychic powers while having mind-blowing sex? Well, if you really, really want to know, you're going to have to subscribe to my Patreon. Well, let's skip ahead. You got your big titty goth girlfriend, you're gaining psychic powers while having mind-blowing sex. So now what? Well, you start a YouTube channel with your BTGGF. And the two of you tell everyone about the weird-ass coincidences you've been experiencing and how. Then you tell them about me. But also do skits and stuff. Remember what I said earlier about being a content creator? Funny enough, I also write skits you can perform. Know where you can find them? Anyway, grow your community both online and IRL and start advocating for social issues that are important to you. Start a nonprofit, like a religious sect. All of it. Do all the things, and you will finally be cured of being a nice guy. You're welcome. Subscribe to my Patreon.
Now, it's a great puzzler to well-trained Christians to come across the trickster hero, because he's both a kind of devil and fool and the creator of the world. And so he comes in as an upsetting factor. He breaks through. He even breaks through the notion of what a deity ought to be. And this, I think, is about as good an example as you can find anywhere of the trickster hero. Now that trickster trait turns up in deities like Yahweh. Yahweh's a trickster. He lets people build a building, and then because it gets to be 3 stories high, he's afraid it's going to wreck heaven, and he comes down and floods the world. That's a trickster stunt. That's a ridiculous act. And we think it quite normal for a deity to behave that way. If a human being behaved that way, we would send him to a lunatic asylum.
So